The Biden administration is quietly continuing efforts to resettle migrants across the U.S. by flying plane loads of young migrants into suburban New York City. Charter flights from Texas to New York and other parts of the country have been shuttling migrants to new homes since August, according to a report by the New York Post. Roughly 2,000 migrants apprehended at the U.S.-Mexico border have been brought to one airport near White Plains, New York, in just the past 2 months. Resettlement flights have also been spotted landing in Florida. The flights come amid the Biden administration's months-long struggle to get the situation at the southern border under control. Encounters with undocumented immigrants at the border hit a 21-year high over the summer. Border Patrol officials encountered nearly 200,000 people along the southern border in the month of July alone. Biden administration officials have defended their immigration policies by claiming they are removing most undocumented immigrants who arrive through Mexico, and by saying publicly that the border is closed. But thousands of migrants have been let into the U.S. with a notice to appear in court at a much later date, as the Biden administration works to resettle them in communities across the country. Sarah Westwood for the Washington Examiner.
And this is a comment and a statement that they put out yesterday, so no new one as of today. But here it reads, "It is our legal responsibility to safely care for unaccompanied children until they can be swiftly unified with a parent or a vetted sponsor. As part of the unification process, our Office of Refugee Resettlement facilitates travel for the children in its custody to their family or sponsors across the country. In recent weeks, unaccompanied children pass through the Westchester Airport en route to their final destination to be unified with their parents or vetted sponsor." Now let's bring in Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton. Senator, welcome. This story is captivating the nation as we see these flights landing in the dark of night. Why the secrecy? And again, we have reached out many times on this report to the White House, and they are not deploying anybody to us, and they have not given us a direct statement on it. So why the secrecy?
Well, that's a very good question. I remember when I was in the Army on Friday afternoon, the first sergeant would brief all the privates for the weekend, and he'd remind them that nothing good usually happens after midnight. And I think we can now extend that old Army wisdom to Joe Biden's immigration policy as well. The obvious reason why they're flying these migrants across the country in the dead of night is because they don't want to reveal the consequences of their open borders policy. Look, if they were proud of their policy, if they thought it was a political winner for them, they'd be having these flights in the middle of the daytime. They'd be coordinating it with the local TV stations. They'd be celebrating what they view as a great accomplishment. But they know that Joe Biden's open border policy is a political disaster. So they're trying to hide the consequences of that policy in the dark of night.
The New York Post editorial board shared a similar sentiment. And just a heads up, we got the 2-minute warning from the White House. Jen Psaki about to begin that briefing shortly. We'll go to her when she starts taking questions because, Senator, she will likely face questions about this. And our own Peter Doocy is in that briefing room. Here's the editorial board this morning, in addition to their reporting on this, saying, quote, "Biden playing a deadly game using these secret flights to move migrants. There's a reason the Biden administration is using these secret flights to small airports to move unaccompanied minors who illegally cross the border. They don't want voters to know just how many people are being waved right into the country, because President Biden understands that open borders might be the policy of progressives, but it's not popular among the majority of Americans." And bottom line, this is a sign, as we see this happening, Senator, that this is not just a border issue. We are now seeing this spread to many other parts of the country. And with these flights landing in Westchester, reportedly, these migrant children are being sent to all over the tri-state area. We know of a facility in Long Island. We have phone calls into them. They are not returning our calls, and they're certainly not giving us any statement on the demographic of those children, how they're being vetted. We are told that some landing are men in their early 20s. So how big of an issue is this for President Biden politically if he continues to remain silent on what his strategy is here?
Well, it's very hurtful for President Biden politically, but it's a catastrophe for our country. We're going to be close to 2 million migrants crossing our border very soon. Texas is a big country with a lot of great people, but not even Texas can keep 2 million new residents there. That's why they're flying them to places like Florida and New York and all points in between. And this is going to put real strain on those communities, on their hospitals, on their school systems, on their housing, on their police departments as well. All of these migrants should not be in Texas or Florida or New York. They should be in Mexico, because President Biden should have kept the Remain in Mexico policy in place to make sure that people aren't entering the country with bogus claims of asylum. But he rescinded on his first day. Federal courts have told him he has to re-implement it. He's going to do that next month. But in the meantime, we've had 2 million illegal migrants not just cross the border, but fan out across the country.
Ted Cruz teed on this, your Republican colleague in the Senate, earlier this morning. Listen.
Their entire political strategy is based on secrecy. What is happening at our southern border is an absolute tragedy. We've had over 1.3 million people cross illegally. We're on a path to have over 2 million people cross. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris caused this, and their entire strategy is ignore it. And they're counting on the corrupt corporate media to ignore it as well. So, of course, they fly in the middle of the night because they have no defense.
You know, and important to point out, we all sympathize with the fact that there are children and families that are willing to make this dangerous journey. And the editorial board at the Post so eloquently points that out this morning, Senator. Of course, there's sympathy for parents who so desperately have their children looking for a better life, that they have a 7-year-old walk to America. But by not having a set policy, by not forcing people to apply for a visa from the country they live in, you're making a mockery of our immigration laws. And the board goes further to say you are also encouraging a terrible, dangerous pipeline. How many children will be assaulted or die trying to get here? And that is a really important point to make, Senator.
It's vitally important. I don't see how it's moral to encourage desperate parents who are living in poverty to try to send their children thousands of miles across Latin America to get to our southern border. It's also totally arbitrary. There are many places in Africa and Asia and Europe that would love to come here, but simply because they don't share a land border with the United States or can't get to a land border, they're not welcome in our country. This is the moral catastrophe of Joe Biden's immigration policy. They act like it's some great moral victory when in reality it's creating incentives for very dangerous and immoral behavior.
And look, people just want some transparency on this issue. We'll see what the White House says in just a moment. Mike Pompeo putting out earlier, it's simple. We should know who is coming in and out of our country. And Senator Marsha Blackburn, by the way, is dealing with this in Tennessee as well. She says the administration has been secretly flying illegal aliens into Tennessee for months, and now we know that they're doing the same in New York. So you and many other members of Congress are identifying that this is not just a new problem. This is something that's been going on for some time. Now we have pictures showing it there in Westchester. Senator, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you think President Obama has President Biden's ear? Do you think President Obama is involved at all in this?
I think he's probably involved, but actually I heard a statement which I respected. President Obama said it's not sustainable to do what we're doing with the open border.
That's what he said?
He made that statement a few days ago. And I said, that's nice that he did that he said that. It's obvious that it's true, but this group is far left of Obama. Or, again, it's incompetent. I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. When you look at what's going on in Texas and Arizona, when you look at tens of thousands of people pouring into our country, and then they say you have to wear a mask, you have to get vaccinated, you have to do all these different things, and yet these people are flowing in by the hundreds of thousands a week.
Let's bring in Fox News contributor and former acting ICE director Tom Homan to talk more about this now. So similar flights occurred in the Trump administration, also occurred in the Obama administration. What's different about this time?
It's the vast numbers. Look, the Biden administration already released over 120,000 children. The other big difference is the vetting, as the Senator just noted. The vetting is much less under this administration than the Trump administration. For instance, when a child's going to be released to a sponsor, who's usually a parent or relative, we would not only vet that sponsor, but everybody in that household to make sure there wasn't a child predator, a sex offender, or a gang member. But the Biden administration is in such a hurry to release people because they don't have the optics of a crisis, so they speed up their release. They cut that vetting way down, only on the sponsor and just a part of the sponsor vetting. So it doesn't surprise me that a couple weeks ago, the administration come out and said they lost track of 1/3 of the children released in this country. Now, if 120,000 was a number, that's the last number I looked at about a month ago. That's 40,000 children unaccounted for. They don't know where they are. The sponsors aren't responding. The child's not responding, which puts great concern of where these children are. Are they in danger? Are they in some sort of sexual predator status? Are they being forced labor? This is a serious concern, and this administration has not taken the proper steps to protect these children.
As we were here in the studio watching the briefing there at the White House, you said that this is basically what they're doing, flying these children in, is the next to last step in a human smuggling operation.
Look, most of these kids are being released to parents or relatives who paid an alien smuggling organization to smuggle their child. That's a felony. But now they don't have to pay to get the child smuggled to the border because the Biden administration is going to give them the rest away. They're going to deliver them to the very people who pay the cartels to smuggle them in most circumstances. And I've said many times, the Biden administration is the first president or secretary that I know of that's actively facilitating cross-border crime, human trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking, because they're making that last step to make it happen.
Yeah, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is looking at this from afar because most of these children are being released in New York State, Connecticut, and New Jersey. But a spokesman for DeSantis saying if the Biden administration is so confident that their open border policy is good for our country, why the secrecy? I think there are probably a lot of political leaders who are asking that question. But do they have any recourse in terms of what the federal government is doing here?
Look, we got to sue. I've been involved in the state of Texas. I filed more affidavits suing this president than I did in my entire career. We're 3-0 in Texas, and we'll keep suing them. But let's be clear on what we call children. First of all, 70% of these children are the age of 16 and 17. Also, they're not always who they claim to be. When I was ICE director, we did Operation Matador in New York on Long Island. We arrested just short of 500 gang members, many MS-13. 42% of those gang members came into this country as an unaccompanied alien child. So this is a much deeper and much more dangerous than what the administration is letting on it is.
Let me also, Tom, while you're here, get some quick thoughts, if you could, about Chris Magnus, who is the president's nominee to run Customs and Border Protection. He's on the Hill today having his nomination hearing. He was the police chief in Tucson, currently is. You've dealt with him in the past. Your thoughts?
Terrible choice. It's an excellent choice for the Biden administration because they support open borders and they've decapitated ICE. They don't believe there should be any interior immigration enforcement. So great selection for them, but not a great selection for the laws of this country and the enforcement laws of this country. He supports sanctuary cities. When I was the ICE director, he refused to work with ICE agents and ICE officers in Tucson. Matter of fact, ordered his officers not to assist us. Even though his police officers want to assist us because they know 9 out of 10 of people ICE arrest are criminals. And we're going to take them out of the neighborhood and deport them, which makes that city safer. But Magnus seems to claim, well, I'm protecting immigrant communities by not cooperating with ICE. No, when you release a criminal, illegal alien to the street, they're going to re-offend in the very community in which they live. So the immigrant community is at greater risk of crime.
Chad Wolf is concerned that he doesn't have the overall experience to run a big department like that. So we'll see. I'm sure he's likely to get confirmed. Tom, great to see you today.
Thanks for having me.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with me on this Friday so that I can bring you up to speed on a awful, awful murder that we had. Let me introduce you to our victim. Now, as you know by Florida law, unless the family agrees, we can't release victims' names, but they did on this one. This is Perfecta Paz. She's 74 years old. Perfecta is 5'2", 82 pounds, a slight, small lady. Even though she's not been declared in the early stages of dementia, her family thinks that she may be. So on Tuesday, October the 12th at 5:30 in the morning, we knew she was alive because her sister, who she lives with off of Deansteel Road, was preparing to go to work. The sister works at Disney. She talked to her sister and then she left, and away the sister went off to work that day. The sister gets home about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and she can't find Perfecta. Well, there is a scoundrel that's living with them, and I'll talk more about him in a minute, by the name of Aroldo Paz. He's 39 years of age. When the sister comes home, Aroldo is working in the yard. He is living with Perfecta and her sister at her sister's house. He had been there about 7 months. He'd been there 7 months because he'd been injured in construction in Texas and needed some help, and the family agreed for him to stay there. So the sister can't find Perfecto. Araldo says that Perfecta had too much pride, and she left. She left home. Well, the sister took that on face value, thinking, well, she's got lots of friends. She talked about moving out and getting her own place. Maybe she was out looking for a home. So now it's Wednesday, about 4 o'clock in the morning. The sister wakes up to go to work. She checks to see if her sister Perfecta is in her room, and she's not. She can't find her. She goes to work, and all through the day, she's trying to call her on the cell phone. She's talking to friends. No one knows where Perfecta is, and she is remarkably worried. She gets home from work about 5 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, and not only is Perfecta still missing, but Araldo's gone. He's gone. He's taken off in this vehicle. All of his clothes and belongings are gone. So Araldo's at large, driving this 1999 beige Toyota Camry with a Texas tag, PTC 9735. She immediately, at 5:47, notifies the sheriff's office. So now it's Wednesday late afternoon. As you know, we get the call at 5:47. It starts to get dark now, about 6:30-ish, but we're out there looking. We've got aviation, drones, canines. We're on the side of the road because with the initial information that we receive, we believe that maybe she's wandered off. So we search the woods. It's out in a wooded area. We search the sides of the road. We search the wood. We can't find her. We try to contact Araldo on his cell phone. He's not answering. Can't find him. So now Thursday comes around and we go back and look some more. One of our ag detectives, this particular home site is about 1.5 acres, 1 1/3, 1 2.5 acres. So one of our ag deputies starts back at the house and goes, okay, maybe she found a break in the fence because the yard's fenced. So he's starting and he's walking the fence line, looking where a slight in stature elderly female could get through the fence. As he's walking through the fence, he steps into a soft area. And he goes, something suspicious with that. So he gets post hole diggers and he digs a pilot hole and pulls out a woman's slipper. The woman's slipper he pulls out of the ground matches the description of the shoes that Perfecta was last seen wearing. So obviously our homicide team gets there and they start to excavate what we now know is a gravesite. I talked to the ag detective that located this soft spot, and he is not only a very experienced ag detective, he is a rancher and a farmer in his own right. And he said that if you just looked at the piece of property, it was up in the bushes. They had planted all kinds of fruit trees and all kinds of bushes, and there were natural shrubs. He said you couldn't tell that a body had been buried there. He said it was smoothed back out. The chickens, they had chickens, had come to this fresh piece of property and had pecked around, because when you stir up the ground, you stir up insects. And he said, looking at the ground, you would have never known that it was a grave. But I happened to step in it, and the ground was soft. Our detectives worked through the night last night, unearthing Perfecta, who was deceased. She died a violent death. A violent death. We're looking for Oraldo. Let me tell you about him. He, like Perfecta and her sister, are from Honduras. Perfecta and her sister are here illegally from Honduras. Oraldo is not. He's illegal. He's an illegal alien who has no legal standing in this country. He's been here since 2003. So it's important to point out that, of course, that Perfecta adopted him when he was very young because his natural mother passed. When he was about 6 or 7, Perfecta wanted to come to the United States, according to the sister, and Oraldo didn't want to come. So he stayed back in Honduras with his father, his natural father, until he came to the United States in about 2003. So what we know now is that sometime after the sister went to work at Disney, Oraldo violently murdered the lady that adopted him so many years before and buried her in a shallow grave. She was about 1.5 feet under the earth. And he fled with all of his clothes and belongings. He spent from 2003 until about 7 months ago, as far as we can determine at this point in time, in Texas, when he was injured in construction. They agreed for him to come here so that they could take care of him during his rehabilitation. But about 2 months ago, Oraldo and his aunt, who adopted him as her child, had an argument over money, and she said she wanted her money back. It is reported to us by witnesses that Perfecta said at the time that Oraldo pulled a gun on her and threatened her. But the disturbance calmed down, and they remained living together. So why did Oraldo, 2 months later, kill his aunt, who was his adoptive mother? Well, apparently Perfecta was kind of perfect in the way she wanted things done. And according to the sister, Perfecta continued to stay on Oraldo. He couldn't do anything right. If you washed the car, he used too much water, too much soap, not enough water. She just nagged him and nagged him and nagged him. And apparently, according to Oraldo, from what we see in evidence, of course, we've not had the opportunity to talk with him, he finally did away with Perfecta. He has virtually no criminal history other than an illegal entry into the country in 2003 and a possession of cannabis in 2015 that was ultimately dismissed. Currently, we have outstanding warrants for Oraldo for first-degree murder, for grand theft, and for tampering with evidence. We have this fuzzy picture of the vehicle. We also have evidence and information that this vehicle was recently seen in Texas, in the greater Houston area. So he's back in the area that he fled from. We don't know if he's making his way back to Honduras, if he's got infrastructure and friends there or not. If he is, he shouldn't be too difficult to find, because he'd be the only Hispanic going south of the border when everybody else is coming north of the border. But we need to find him. There's obviously a reward out through Crime Stoppers if someone knows his whereabouts. All you have to do is notify us. We find him with your information. You don't testify. We never know who you are. You never come to court. You make money. And we have this nasty guy who murdered his aunt and his adoptive mother locked up where he needs to be. So once again, it's an example of people that are here illegally in this country committing violent, dangerous crime. So when you tell me that a murderer like this has the right to be in this country when he comes here illegally and then murders a tiny little lady who was gracious enough, along with her sister, to not only allow him to live with them, but to help in his rehab from his injury in construction. He's just a nasty man. And he needs to be arrested quickly. After all, after you've killed one person, it makes killing the second one easier because you can't spend but one life in prison. We need to find him quickly.
First, though, we have an update to a story we first told you about on Friday. A man accused of killing his adoptive mother in Polk County was taken into custody in Houston, Texas. 74-year-old Perfecta Paz was reported missing by her sister last Wednesday. While checking the area around the house, detectives found some freshly disturbed soil. Perfecta's body was found buried there in a shallow grave. Authorities began looking for Geraldo Paz after he left the property with his belongings. The Polk County Sheriff's Office received a tip about his possible whereabouts in Houston. Detectives passed on that information to the U.S. Marshals, and they found him. Geraldo is currently at the Harris County Jail with no bond until he can be extradited to Polk County.
So Fox News obtaining surveillance video of migrants evading capture on our southern border, heading north into the U.S. on camera. William Lajeunesse is live in L.A. Where did they go and what happened, William?
Well, Bill, as you know, Texas is ground zero for the border crisis, but the largest increase in apprehensions are in Arizona, 1,000% in Yuma, but those you see here were not caught. They're among the 400,000 gotaways this year. So these images come from 20 trail cameras hidden across southern Arizona, some up to 50 miles from the border, capturing hundreds of illegal immigrants headed north. 90% single men, often wearing camouflage. Agents say some carry drugs, others guns. 24/7 from the heat of August to January. Backpacks, water bottles, everyone is on the move. And here you're going to notice the last person in line is dragging a blanket to help cover their tracks. And here you're going to see something that you often don't see. A dozen migrants jumping into the bed of a pickup truck. Packed like sardines, they're likely headed to a stash house in Phoenix or San Diego, where smugglers will demand the balance of what they owe. Senator Lindsey Graham got briefed last week in Yuma.
Word is out, this is where you come to claim asylum. They'll never send you back. If you don't fix that, the good people of this part of Arizona, you're going to be overrun.
So apprehensions jumping just from 800 last October under President Trump to 17,000 in August under President Biden, a 1,038% increase. Now, here's the amazing thing. Unlike Texas, 75% of those caught in Yuma are not from Mexico or the Northern Triangle. Most come from Brazil, Ecuador, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Haiti. And Yuma agents say, Bill, they apprehended about migrants from 40 countries, 40,000 from Brazil this year alone. That's because they can't fly into the U.S. without a visa. They go to Mexico, they take a bus to Yuma, and based on their speech, their clothes, their luggage, they're not persecuted nor poor, and yet they'll claim asylum.
That's a fascinating report. The video is really telling. William, thank you. Nice to see you in L.A.
That story is not unique. We've heard several stories just like that one from Texans. Right. And, this is so common, unfortunately, now that a lot of the mainstream media doesn't care. They don't cover this story anymore.
Well, and it's tragic because it is an invasion. And by Biden's actions, he's actually complicit in helping the invasion. And keep in mind, too, John, that when you talk to you hear from individual landowners who are reporting this massive flow across their property, the drug cartels know where the Border Patrol are. They know where they patrol. and they make sure that the people they want caught and shipped around the country at U.S. government expense, that they send them across the border at those places where they'll find Border Patrol. Most of these landowners, private landowners, are in places where the Border Patrol don't patrol so much.
Yeah.
And so keep in mind, these are people that the drug cartels do not want caught. And they come through, they cut fences, and that's exactly why landowners have been carrying pistols and rifles, because they fear for their lives.
They have no choice.
There's serious drugs coming across.
We see how these border policies disrespect our rights as U.S. citizens to have that special honor being U.S. citizens. They want to dilute that.
Right.
They don't care about personal property rights. We see that from the ranchers as well. And we also know what kind of message this sends to the cartels. We're hearing of these growing reports of cartels shooting at Border Patrol personnel, threatening Americans. The border crisis, not only a danger to American livelihoods, but how long before we see another Border Patrol agent get gunned down by one of these cartels? What would the Biden administration do then? Anything? We have to ask, and we shouldn't be asking.
Right, and it's a great question, and I don't think you'll get a good answer because they don't care. They're more concerned about bringing people in that they think will someday, very soon, be Democrat voters. But I don't hear a lot about Delaware getting people, but we know that the one thing the Biden administration is doing well now, after the 15,000 plus Haitians, is getting them away from the border, getting them away from cameras that might pick them up. But we cannot find out what states they're going to, what towns they're going to. Towns and states ought to be notified. They ought to have a chance to object.
That's what folks in those communities say when they see these folks show up there, and they're very obvious. It's easy to point them out. If anyone's flown on a plane domestically recently, they're being transferred all over the country on commercial airline travel. They got brand new clothes, new duffel bags. Something is not right. You can pick them out of the crowd pretty easily. The other thing we're hearing too is the Biden administration is preparing to reinstate Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, but they're waiting until next month. I mean, they've already admitted that this was a good policy, a policy that helped prevent illegal immigration, but why are they waiting a whole other extra month to implement it again?
Apparently, they don't have quite as many Democrat voters coming in illegally yet as they want. But I'm telling you, when we have never had a Congress that approved more than 1 million, just over 1 million legal visas. No country comes close to that. And here you've got the Biden administration that is illegally against the law. He's bringing in 2 million people in 1 year. It is incredible that he is getting away with this so far. It should be a basis for removing him or whomever is calling the shots.
Again, I just, because it doesn't get the same coverage that we provide to this story, I don't think most Americans really have an idea of what's going on down there. I mean, I think they actually do, but the ones watching mainstream media don't. And that's why nothing's being done about this. They would be more concerned, I think, if more folks were paying attention.
We've got a Fox News alert for you. There's exclusive new reporting tonight, just into us from the New York Post, on the Biden administration's abuse of our crumbling immigration system. The Post cover story tomorrow will reveal that in recent weeks, thousands of illegal aliens have been flown from the Texas border into Westchester County Airport in New York on charter jets. And it's not the only place they're heading. Miranda Devine from the New York Post is on this story for us tonight and joins us with developments. Miranda, good to see you. Give us the outline of this story, if you would.
Thanks, Tucker. Well, we know that Joe Biden has dismantled all the border protections and that we've had upwards of 1.5 million illegal migrants cross into America. But what we didn't know was where they were going. So we had a tip-off that they were flying into Westchester County Airport in White Plains in the dead of night, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. So last week we went and had a look, and we did see 2 planes fly in with about 100 migrants get off the plane. Most of them were unaccompanied children. We're told by the government they were all unaccompanied children, but several of them did look to us to be males in their 20s, late teens. And then they were put onto buses, charter buses. They had a police escort out of the airport, and then they were dispersed around various places in New York, Long Island, also New Jersey. They were dropped off on a rest area at the New Jersey Turnpike. We also sent a crew to Jacksonville because these flights are coming from Texas, from McAllen, El Paso, Houston, and they're coming to White Plains via Jacksonville, Florida. So we had a crew down there on the weekend, and they also spotted a flight landing, and about 15 to 20 illegal migrants got off that plane, and they were bussed to about a place about 130 miles west of Jacksonville. So we've done our best to get the information from the government, but we've really been stonewalled. No one wants to talk. All that we're referred to the Health and Human Services, and all they will say, or the White House will say, is that they have an obligation to look after unaccompanied children, and that's what they're doing. But they don't explain why they're doing it in the dead of night. Why is this such a secret operation? Why is no one talking about it?
Well, they're doing it in the dead of night because they're violating federal law. And so you have mass illegality promoted by the White House, which is an unprecedented thing. Brandon Devine, I appreciate your reporting on this and for bringing it to us tonight. Thank you.
Senator Lindsey Graham says the southern border is broken, and he's concerned there's never been a better time for terrorists to attack.
Our Taggart Houck spoke with him. He is live in Greenville tonight. And Taggart, this comes after the senator's recent visit to the border.
Yeah, Senator Graham making that visit to the southern border last week. He says morale is low, people continue to come, and this is something that affects everyone.
The southern border in the United States is a complete disaster.
Senator Lindsey Graham in Greenville Monday, not holding back after a visit last week to the southern border in Arizona.
I saw a tremendous spike in illegal immigrant crossing.
He says a large number of people asking for asylum are from Brazil.
This has taken a lot of time with the Border Patrol to process these people. The ones that I saw were smartly dressed, had better luggage than I did, and this needs to stop. But the takeaway for me was the unaccompanied minors break your heart, but the idea that terrorists could penetrate our southern border is very real to the Border Patrol. They feel abandoned. There's no plan in place to fix this.
Graham has been calling on the Biden administration to restart the Trump-era Remain in Mexico immigration policy. It forces migrants at the border to stay in Mexico or another country until their case is heard. The Department of Homeland Security now says it will once again enforce that policy. And when asked, Graham was critical of the Biden administration's intent on vaccine mandates. Reports suggest about 40% of TSA agents are unvaccinated.
But the Delta variant is deadly serious. But at the end of the day, it's still America. And I don't want to drive good people away from doing their job, but I would urge you to be vaccinated.
He said he is concerned the effect that those mandates have on the economy as well as the supply chain. In Greenville, Taggart Houck, WIFF News 4.
Welcome back. The New York Post now reporting that the Biden administration has flown about 2,000 underage migrants into the state of New York since August. Reaction now from the president of the Federation for American Immigration Reform, Dan Stein. Dan, good afternoon to you. As we've heard these stories, people have called it an urban myth or a legend that this is actually happening around the country. But the Post is saying that it's happening. It's happening here in New York. Your thoughts?
Well, a hostile foreign power could not do a better job sabotaging America's immigration controls than the Biden administration has. They have systematically, under cover of darkness, dead of night, dismantled one policy after another. The wall, they've destroyed the wall, migration protection protocols, they've destroyed interior enforcement. Mayorkas says if you get in, you're never going to be deported. They've expanded asylum beyond recognition. There's no longer any detention. And Mayorkas and the Biden administration have asserted an unlimited right to parole aliens into the country under phony asylum claims or any other pretext they want. with no prospect they're going to be removed. And Jackie, imagine if you came home at night and you found 10 people in your upstairs bedrooms that nobody had talked to you about. Are the American people so stupid or ignorant that they're not entitled to know who's coming into the country and how many? Why is this a secret? What's the agenda?
That's a very, very poignant question. And I always bring this up when I have the conversation about immigration. We are champions for legal immigration in this country. Nobody really has a problem with that. The issue right now is what's happening at the border and the fact that essentially since this administration came in, it created an open border policy to let anybody in. During this pandemic, when people weren't being tested, as we see the cartels, as we see the coyotes profiting off of what's happening at the border, off the backs of American taxpayers. It's crazy to me that there is so much, burying of heads in the sand here when it comes to this issue.
But they're doing this intentionally, Jackie. They are co-conspirators with the cartels and the smuggling operations. The smuggling operations know exactly what they're doing and how to manipulate the system. Mayorkas and Biden believe this is appropriate to set essentially an unlimited number of people to parole into the country. And as I say, with no prospect they're ever going to be removed, taxpayers have to pay for education, housing subsidies, food subsidies that go on for years. Again, no prospect they're ever going to be removed. What is the agenda? No modern nation in history survives the collapse of its border controls. This is not only a threat to national security and public safety, it jeopardizes the right to national self-determination. Why do these communities not have a chance to participate in the decisions? Why are we all kept in the dark? What is the reason why the Biden administration is operating in secret? Why is there no transparency?
Yeah, and Dan, one of the issues is this recent announcement. We're going to reinstate Remain in Mexico when that was one of the first things that they overturned and part of the problem. But so many say that with the surge that we've seen across the border, significant damage has been done here, even if this Remain in Mexico policy isn't just all talk, but will actually be reinforced.
Yeah, well, again, it requires the cooperation of the Mexican government, but the Biden administration has torched all the cooperation the Trump administration had, not only with Mexico, but with the Northern Triangle countries, with the cooperative agreements that have been negotiated. Mexico will obviously want a price to put it in place. Meantime, the Biden administration is fighting in court to continue to overturn it. The point is, nobody can name one single policy the Biden administration has adopted since January that makes it more difficult for somebody to immigrate illegally. Everything they have done is to facilitate, encourage, reward, finance illegal immigration to them. And there are hundreds of millions of people who want to move here. We are at the cusp of a massive, uncontrolled migration flow, the likes of which we've never seen in American history. Why? Because the word has gone out all over the world. This is what you do, and that's why they're flying in all over the world to take advantage of this.
Yeah, the borders are open.
It's intentional.
Dan,
it's on purpose. It's intentional.
Just in the last 30 seconds, your thoughts on what the agenda is. Lay it out for my viewers.
Well, they basically believe they can re-engineer the electorate by bringing in people who will ultimately become dependent upon subsidies and therefore vote Democrat. They believe the future of the Democratic Party relies upon destroying America's immigration controls.
I hear you. Dan Stein, great to see you this afternoon. Thank you for your insight.
Now let's bring in the Attorney General of Arizona, Mark Brdonovich, who joins us now. Your Honor, you visited the border yesterday. What did you see?
Well, thank you, Stu, for having me on. And I've been to the border many times. And as someone that grew up in Arizona, I will tell you the situation right now is the worst it's ever been. And that's not only talking to the sheriffs down at the border, but it's talking to the ranchers. And it's from my own firsthand experience as a gang prosecutor. It is absolutely terrible. We see not only the numbers of, as the report you just showed, when we talk about people that are giving themselves up, we know we're on pace to exceed 2 million people, twice the population of Biden's home state of Delaware, but we also see all these gotaways, literally thousands a week now of people that are dressed in camouflage that don't want to be caught, that are the worst of the worst. And we've seen this huge spike in fentanyl and other hard drugs coming across our border, which is not only going to affect Arizona, but which is going to affect this entire country.
Do the people of Arizona have to pay for a lot of this?
Of course, we pay for it in many ways. We have numerous lawsuits right now going on against the Biden administration, and one of those lawsuits involves the public charge rule, where the Biden administration rescinded policies that basically say if you want to come into this country, you have to be able to support yourself. And instead, the Biden administration wants to give a plethora of government benefits to people that have entered here illegally. So it's not just about giving them, room service and free airfare. It's literally about giving them, free health care and other benefits. And so we have that lawsuit at the Supreme Court. We're trying to force the Biden administration in court to continue to build the wall. And of course, one of the most blatant disregards for the law is the Biden administration failing to deport people with deportation orders. So, Stu, what the Biden administration has done is they've decriminalized and incentivized and monetized people coming here. And as a result, we see these record numbers. But make no mistake about it, Arizona is paying the cost. We've seen an increase in, fentanyl deaths. Opioid and fentanyl deaths now are the leading cause for teenagers in our second largest county. We know the homicides are up in certain counties. But this may be in Arizona right now with those human costs and the price tag cost, but it is coming to every city in this country.
Is it true that users on Facebook can share information on how to get into America illegally? So there's an active support as here's how you do it, and it's on Facebook. What can you do about that?
Well, it's absolutely heartbreaking, and I will tell you, Stu, if I were in the Senate, U.S. Senate, I would do what Joe Manchin is doing and basically say, Manchin held up this bloated infrastructure bill because he wouldn't give him a vote. Where the heck are people like Cartel Kelly? Why aren't they saying, I am not going to vote on any nominees, any judicial nominees. I'm not going to vote on any infrastructure bills until we do something to address the border crisis. And you have companies out there, as you just alluded to, we just sent a letter to. Facebook admitted to us in a letter that they are helping promote or facilitating human smuggling into this country. It is the federal government's job and the job of the U.S. Attorney's Office to prosecute those cases. So instead of trying to intimidate parents at local school board meetings for exercising their First Amendment rights, where the heck is the Biden administration and Merrick Garland when it comes to actually enforcing laws where they have the primary jurisdiction, and that includes on human smuggling? So shame on Facebook, shame on the Facebook board of directors, shame on corporate America that's so interested in being woke, and yet they're basically destroying the fabric of this country and undermining the rule of law.
Mark Brnovich, Attorney General of the state of Arizona, thank you very much for being with us, sir. Come again soon. We want another update on what's going on in your state. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Well, with everything happening with the country's immigration crisis, some local citizens decided to take to the streets and thank the men and women manning the border. Just outside the Border Patrol headquarters, local residents sat showing their support for our Border Patrol. They waved flags and signs to passerbys as a sign of their support for those fighting to secure the border. One resident we spoke with says that this is the least we can do.
They've got a thankless job, and they're just being overwhelmed right now. And by not finishing the wall, it just makes it worse. If we can get the wall built, that'll help them. And I'm all for anything that helps the Border Patrol.
Yeah, that gentleman says they plan on meeting here each and every Monday from 9 in the morning until 11 a.m.
Welcome back. Moving illegal migrants in the dead of night. The New York Post now reporting that the Biden administration has been secretly flying underage migrants into New York before shipping them off on buses to where they want to go. You heard about these moves first right here on this program. And I just returned from a trip to the border where I saw the crisis firsthand and I spoke with migrants. Joining me right now is Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty. He's also a member of the Foreign Relations, Appropriations, and Banking Committees. Senator Hagerty, it's good to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. I know that you sounded the alarm on this months ago, on the administration's secrets in terms of transporting migrants into your state, Tennessee. We also heard from Senator Marsha Blackburn about this. What can you tell us about what's going on?
Well, first, I want to thank you, Maria, for bringing so much attention to what's happening at our southern border. The Biden administration wants us to completely ignore this and look the other way. You've been great about calling this out for the American public, and as you say, we saw this happen first in my home state of Tennessee. The Biden administration began to ship migrant children in the dead of night. We caught them with, on camera with private planes flying into Chattanooga, Tennessee. One of my friends was on a commercial flight and saw this happen as well. They landed after 1 a.m. They bring these children in, they put them onto buses, they send them to undisclosed locations. One of the locations we did find out about had terrible crimes take place. They've actually had to shut it down. Yet there's been zero transparency from the Biden administration. I put forward legislation to address this, to force the Biden administration to inform our governors what's happening. Our hospital systems need to know. Are they going to be overwhelmed with people that haven't been tested for COVID, that may be sick? Are they going to be overwhelming our school system? Will they overwhelm our law enforcement? We have zero information. Now we're seeing it happen in New York, New Jersey, and other parts of the nation.
It's unbelievable. I mean, look, we're showing pictures of our trip last week because I was able to talk with ranchers and talk with other border officials to really get a sense of what is taking place here. If they didn't want to do this under the radar, they would be doing it in broad daylight. Instead, they're secretly dropping migrants off in the dead of night. You're not even allowed to fly after midnight, and yet these flights are coming into private airports after midnight at 1 in the morning. So they're purposely trying to mislead? Is that the point? They don't want people to understand that they're flying migrants, illegals, to different places in the country? This is outrageous.
That absolutely seems to be the theme of this administration, Maria. You know, flying these migrants in after curfew, sneaking them in, in the dead of night. It's just like they're trying to manage this massive spending spree that they're doing here in Washington. You must pass it before you can find out what's in it. I mean, this is ridiculous. They have been basically using the cover of night. They've been using obfuscation, everything they can to try to distract us and dissuade us from their entire effort to transform the economy and transform the demographic profile of our nation.
Unbelievable. So let's talk about that for a second, because I know that Biden is trying to save this spending agenda. Where do you think this goes now? He's meeting with the progressives and moderate Democrats today at the White House. And I know that Joe Manchin and Bernie Sanders had their own meeting yesterday. They came out saying, we're talking, we're talking. To me, that means there's absolutely no deal. Manchin says, look, it's likely we're not going to see a reconciliation, obviously, by the 31st. I reported that this week, that the 31st is clearly unlikely. Do you agree with that, or do you think that something can get done in terms of a vote on the table by the 31st, or what's the chances that nothing gets done?
I think the chances that nothing gets done are very high. And what's happening is exactly what I predicted with this infrastructure bill. Nancy Pelosi is going to hold it hostage. They're going to keep creating this crisis, and they're going to continue the circular firing squad that's happening again entirely within the Democrat Party. You notice there are no Republicans involved in these discussions. There is no bipartisanship whatsoever. This is merely the Democrats trying to get at what they think they can shove down the throats of America on a completely partisan fashion using a parliamentary trick called reconciliation. This is bad for America. I think Democrat constituents are realizing this and pushing back hard. Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are pushing back here in the Senate, and I think they're going to encounter a lot of problems in the House as well.
So where do you think this goes then? If they don't get a reconciliation package with all of this spending through, what will they do? Will they do a continuing resolution? How does that play out in your view?
They'll have to do another continuing resolution, which again keeps in place Trump-level spending, and we'll move into next year. And as we do, inflation is going to continue to rage. I think we're going to see another spoiled Thanksgiving and Christmas, thanks to the inflation that the Biden administration is dumping on the American people. Energy prices through the roof. Our dependence on nations like Russia and Iran, again, surging. We're going to try to navigate through Thanksgiving and Christmas with these mandate impositions that are going to cause all types of system disruptions. The price of food at the store is just through the roof again. I think it's going to be a very difficult Thanksgiving and Christmas for people. And I don't think the Biden administration will fare well at all.
This is absolutely extraordinary, Senator. I'm trying to figure out what they're doing. They're ignoring the border. They're pushing through to fundamentally change our economy. They're ignoring the crisis in Afghanistan. We still have people behind enemy lines there with the Taliban running things. And then you've got censoring speech. You've got vaccine mandates. I mean, talk about totalitarian governments. I mean, Senator, thanks very much for being here. We'll keep watching it all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Maria. Great to be with you.
Fox News alert on bombshell new claims about the border crisis as the New York Post reports the White House is secretly flying planes packed with underage migrants across the country, jetting them from Texas to New York in the cover of night. All this leading critics to wonder why the Biden administration would need this kind of covert operation if it had nothing to hide. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Compagno. I'm joined by my co-host Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany, Fox News Headlines 24/7 reporter Carly Shimkus, and in the center virtual seat, Fox and Friends Enterprise reporter Lawrence Jones. Now, the charter flights from Texas reportedly underway since August, with some of the planes touching down in Florida and dropping off dozens of migrants there before heading to New York to resettle the others, busing them to nearby locations. This comes as leaked documents detail the staggering catch and release numbers under the Biden administration, showing that since the beginning of August, tens of thousands of migrants have been released into the U.S. with little or no oversight. All this as we, as usual, still await the official border numbers from last month. And Senator Ted Cruz says it's clear the president's policies are responsible for the border crisis.
Well, their entire political strategy is based on secrecy. What is happening at our southern border is an absolute tragedy. We've had over 1.3 million people cross illegally. We're on a path to have over 2 million people cross. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris caused this, and their entire strategy is ignore it, and they're counting on the corrupt corporate media to ignore it as well. So, of course, they fly in the middle of the night because they have no defense.
Lawrence, you recently came back from the Texas border. Now, was it common knowledge down there where the migrants were being flown to?
They knew they were going on planes, but they didn't know exactly the origin, the destination that they were heading to. So our people on the ground have long suspected this. Look, as someone that was just there embedded with the Texas Special Operations Unit, they're really the ones that are on the front of lines of this fight. You know, the Border Patrol aren't allowed to do their job, so Texas is doing the arrests and then handing them over to Border Patrol. The big question is, why should the American people care about this issue? Of course, there are laws being broken, but I think the larger conversation is the cartel. This is all a part of the criminal enterprise that the cartel now feel emboldened. They just fired off 2 shots last week at our National Guard. The same pathway that they use to have people pay to play to get across the border is the same way that the drugs are trafficked and human trafficking is going through as well. And right now, the reason why they feel like they can get away with this is because the Biden administration behind the scenes will admit to Border Patrol in Texas that there is a crisis, but when they get in front of the cameras, they say something much different. In Panama right now, there are 30,000 migrants waiting to cross the border, and Texas DPS estimate that they'll cross back to the Del Rio sector or the RGV sector within 3 weeks. So obviously, the Biden administration hasn't learned from the Haitian crisis that happened a few weeks ago. They were warned back in June and did nothing. This is part 2. And if you wonder why Democrat seats that are on the local area of Texas are flipping to Republican, this is the reason. Because it's not a political thing for them. It is about safety. I interviewed a guy crossing the border last week, and when the DPS was processing him, I said, you know, did you get a record? He said that he was deported under Donald Trump. He said, look, the former president just deported me because of my driver's license. We ran his background. He was wanted in 3 states, had domestic violence abuse charges as well, and told me that he was going to go see his next wife. So that's what we're dealing with. Am I saying that all the folks that are crossing the border are criminals? No, but we don't know all the people that are crossing. And I think Americans are frustrated with this issue, as well as Democrats as well.
Oh, that's exactly right. So, Carly, let's break this down for a second, top to bottom. So our president is using secret flights to small airports to move unaccompanied illegal migrants, children, right?
Yeah.
And the reason that he's doing it in secret, one can presume, is so that no one knows about it. And to Lawrence's point, you know, who does know about it are the people in Central and South America. And that's why they are paying smugglers to take their children on this perilous journey north to get onto these planes and then be distributed everywhere. And we are waiting for the border numbers, the border encounter numbers, like I mentioned earlier. But the numbers that we do have, the amount of encounters between Border Patrol and unaccompanied migrant children are enough to fill Madison Square Garden every month in succession, Carly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you know, the situation with the flights, I guess shouldn't come as a surprise because the Biden administration did this in May. They were sending flights filled with migrant children, but in the middle of the night, and those flights were landing in Tennessee. And I think what's happening is the Biden administration is really caught off guard with just how unpopular their immigration policies are. And I say that they're caught off guard because, and I guess to President Biden's credit, he told the American people that he was going to do this. I mean, he ran on the platform of reversing President Trump's policies on immigration. And during the Democratic debate, when he was asked if his health care plan would provide coverage for illegal immigrants, his hand shot up along with everybody else. So the American people knew what they were getting when they voted for him. And now they see what it looks like and they don't like it. And a lot of even Democrats, because his poll numbers are 23% approval on immigration and border issues. That means that a lot of Democrats are missing President Trump's policies, which is wild because he was vilified for those policies. The last thing I'll say on this is that this is really the first time that our country has had an open border. I mean, even President Obama, he was labeled the deporter-in-chief. And all it takes is one horrific situation where a Border Patrol agent, God forbid, gets shot, or there's another, God forbid, Kate Steinle situation. And the Biden administration is really going to have to face what they've created.
Yes, and Harris, you know, we talked earlier about the catch and release aspect to this as well. The former Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott, who served under the Biden administration, he told Fox, he says, this administration is abusing the system. He said, when I was sector chief, we granted 5 to 10 paroles a year. He said the Biden administration has granted 32,000 in 2 months.
Yeah, so the main question is why, right? That's the main question. I don't know that Jen Psaki is going to approach that answer. We can't approach Biden or Kamala Harris. So if there's no approaching and no answers and because we know we got plenty of questions, I don't know how you find out why. And if you don't know the why, you can't stop it. Like you've got to know, what does she like to say? The root causes of their decision making. I want to get to something you mentioned though, and because you asked Lawrence such a good question. Do the people know where they're going? I want to give you one day's flight plan by Eric Shawn earlier. 6:37 a.m. McAllen, Texas to Villahermosa, Mexico. Round trip 9:17 back from Villahermosa to McAllen, Texas. 7:47 McAllen, Texas to El Paso, Texas. 2:04 p.m. El Paso, Texas to Jacksonville, Florida. Remember, some of the kids are being taken to a detention center outside Tallahassee. 7 p.m. They're still flying.
Yeah,
they've been flying since 6:37 in the morning. Jacksonville, Florida to Westchester, New York, outside of New York City. These planes are busy. And I think the tragedy that Carly was kind of, it's unfortunate. We hope nothing happens, particularly with the grown-ups. But with the children, we don't know because it's all happening at night. There's no accountability for unaccompanied minors. And you know what? You can preach all day long about how that shouldn't happen. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this at night? What are they hiding? What don't they want us to know? Because you do shady stuff in the shade.
And it's basically like a constellation, like a subway station every hour on the hour, but going all across the country. And Kaylee, this administration, what this scene is that we're depicting is a whole lot different than when candidate Biden promised us.
Oh, yeah. Remember, this is the most transparent and humanitarian administration in history. Joe Biden, his literal quote was he promised us the highest standard of transparency. Jen Psaki stood at the podium and said, I will share the truth even when it's hard to hear. Well, I've been watching some of the press briefings. I don't recall her standing from the podium and saying we're doing secret flights at night from Westchester to Jacksonville, dumping more than 100,000 migrants in the country. I didn't hear that at the podium. No, the truth wasn't shared with us. It is hard to hear, and the truth was concealed. And what is concealed, by the way, on the humanitarian level? Remember, Kamala's our big humanitarian. Kids being dumped over border walls and left on their own, girls in emergency intake facilities using the restroom in bags, kids on suicide watch lists and facilities that reporters aren't able to go into. No. This is what's being concealed from the great humanitarians, the Bidens and Kamala Harris.
And most of that you're talking about is happening in the daytime. Yeah. And we still can see. I have a quick legal question for you.
Yes,
and I know it's your segment, but I got to pick your brain on this. So do municipalities, like I live in New Jersey, they're taking some of these children there in the cover of night. And that is the problem, by the way. It's not the beautiful little precious ones. It is the route that they're coming. And as General Keane said, they're institutionalizing illegal immigration into this country. And they're starting young, right? Do these municipalities, these states, have to face any sort of recourse from their citizens who balk at this night flight situation?
Well, this was the subject in part of the lawsuit from the governors against the federal government. So I think the better link is the citizens to the federal government who is imposing this on the municipalities and the states, right? Because technically, through the supremacy clause, the federal government does trump any type of local and state laws, but only when it's constitutional. And so that's what these governors are arguing. They're saying you are encroaching on states' rights.
DeSantis.
Exactly, among others. They're saying you're encroaching on our states' rights. You are depleting our resources, and what you're doing is unconstitutional. So they have taken up that mantle, that argument on behalf of their citizens, saying you're leaving us with nothing, and you're just dumping all of these likely COVID positive and the like migrants and unaccompanied minors. But I look forward to seeing the future lawsuits as well about these kids.